Tonight on the All-Night Drive-In Picture Show.
Well, gentlemen, what's happened in the Lover's Lane case?
Captain, we ain't got nothing. No witnesses. Neither the girl nor the boy could give us a decent description of the man. The boy really never saw him. All he's able to tell us that the man had a white hood over his face and was strong as hell.
Fact is, Chief, the only thing we really do know is that we've got a very strange person on our hands.
And now your projectionists. They're wearing jammies with Yodas and shit on them. Ryan Mason and Charles Wood.
Welcome to the All-Night Drive-In Picture Show. My name is Ryan, and that's Chuck over there.
Hi.
Hi. First off, we'd like to apologize for our very scattered recording output.
Yeah.
We've been remodeling the snack bar, and folks, it's not going well. So
No. We got to hire out next time.
Yeah, no kidding. We thought we could do it ourselves, and boy, were we sadly mistaken.
Yeah. Well, you thought you could do it yourself. Like, I've basically just been sitting here eating stale popcorn watching you do it out the window of the projection booth. So
yeah, you're a classic contractor. You're a hell of a supervisor.
That's right. That's right. Don't put that there. That's where the swing set's going.
Because you hurry up, I really want to get home in time for NCIS or whatever.
I love David Caruso, man. Is he even on that show? I don't know what show he's on.
I think that's Mark Harmon. If that show is even still on the air, I don't know.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and get started, shall we?
Yeah, let's fire it up. Attention patrons, the movies discussed on this podcast will be spoiled from start to finish. If you wish to experience these cinematic gems visually, please do so before continuing with this episode. We will be right here when you return. Thank you and have a pleasant evening.
And now, please enjoy our feature presentation.
Panic rocks post-World War II Texarkana as a sadistic masked man picks off the town's youth. This is the Town That Dreaded Sundown.
World War II had ended only 8 months earlier, and the town of Texarkana, population 40,000, which straddles the Texas-Arkansas border, was re-gearing for peace after 4 years of rationing, war bonds, and shortages. Although a trickle was still arriving, most of the boys were back home and out of uniform. Many were enrolling in college or starting up businesses with the help of the GI Bill of Rights. Some people still had doubts about President Truman and were worried over the growing tension with Russia. The wave of strikes sweeping the country were being felt by many of the Texarkana businesses. But fears that the workforce at the United States Army's Red River Arsenal would be cut to nothing had not materialized. There were long waiting lists of people ready to buy the still scarce new cars, as well as all kinds of household appliances. The building business was booming, and people around Texarkana generally were optimistic about the future. It was Sunday, March 3rd, 1946. The beginning of a reign of terror for the people of Texarkana and surrounding areas of Arkansas and Texas. A terror so indelibly imprinted that today, 30 years later, people still speak of it fearfully. The incredible story you are about to see is true. Where it happened and how it happened. Only the names have been changed.
So that golden voice that you just heard there was the narrator, Vern Stearman. That man's voice is fantastic. I want that voice so bad.
I mean, that's like that quintessential "you are there" type thing, man. So cool.
What a voice.
You know, that guy only narrated 4 films, and most of them were about beasts that attack towns. I think the biggest one was Los Angeles.
Yeah.
The Legend of Boggy Creek, which is another Pierce movie in 72, then this film, then The Dark in 79, and The Being in 83. So he was actually the weatherman for Channel 6, which was the NBC affiliate in Texarkana and Shreveport during this time. So
that's great.
Oh, man, I wish I had that voice. I would
no kidding.
I would speak all the time. I would just be talking. I would call up to order a pizza just to hear myself talk and then cancel the order.
I would drink nothing but tea with honey for my entire life.
That's right. Got to protect the instrument.
That's right. Keep it coated. Keep it coated.
I have to say, during this narration, the wedding scene in here where those people are walking out of the chapel, that groom, tell me that guy does not smell like peanut butter farts. Just tell me.
Probably, yeah.
His acting is so terrible, too. People are throwing rice, and he's like, hey, what's happening here? You know?
Yeah.
So awful.
Why they throwing this at me, baby?
Yeah, hey. I'm finally going to get laid tonight.
This waiting for marriage stuff is bullshit.
And that's one of the best performances in this movie.
That's true. All right, so we open with Sammy Fuller, played by Mike Hackworth, and Linda Mae Jenkins, played by Christine Ellsworth. Jenkins! And they're parking. And for you young folks that don't know what parking is, that's when you park in a secluded area so that you can have the dirty sex.
It's the part that you all skip nowadays with Tinder, where you just send dick pics and stuff.
Right.
It's the part you skip.
When you actually want to have physical contact, you have to go somewhere to do that. So
right. Or make the attempt, I guess.
So Sammy tries to get fresh with Linda, and Linda shoots him down. Then suddenly the hood pops up and then goes back down, and we see a man with a white bag over his head with eye holes cut out, holding the cable from the car engine. Sammy can't start the car. The hooded man smashes the driver's window and pulls him out. The man then comes back for Linda, and the shrill screaming ensues from that point. Whew.
This guy is he's like a super mechanic. He pops that hood for 1 second and comes out with a fistful of wires and something. I don't know anything about engines.
Right. He knew right where to go, didn't he?
Yeah, he's just oh, there it is. This is a 46 Buick. Here we go. I like it. Was a nice touch calling the first male victim Sammy Fuller. Of course, Samuel Fuller.
Sure.
I love Charles B. Pierce. This movie probably would have been better if Sam Fuller had directed it. But nevertheless, I thought it was good.
As long as Pierce got to keep his role in the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Or got that role in maybe a different movie.
Perhaps, yeah. His own starring vehicle, maybe.
Yeah.
As the credits roll, Linda Mae is bloodied on the side of the road, and a car pulls over to help her. Police and medics are called. Deputy Ramsey, played by Andrew Prine, is on the scene. He radios in that both are still alive and are being taken to the local hospital.
Prine's performance as he flags the army ambulance in and everything is excellent because he's frustrated and he's, focused, but you can also see that this guy already knows he's in over his head.
Yeah.
Even as crime-ridden as Texarkana supposedly was back in that time frame, this sheriff looks flustered. And really in this movie, Texarkana is kind of portrayed as this idyllic place, which I think is on purpose because it sets then all this really violent stuff in stark relief against that idyllic post-war background. And I think Prine's performance fits in with that. You can tell that he's just oh shit, this is bad, and this is not going to get better, and how am I going to find this person? And,
right.
So
he's really good all the way through the movie, I think, with the exception of one scene, which is no fault of his own. But
right, absolutely. And I think the thing about him, too, is that his intuition kind of is the thread through this film. He's kind of the driving force behind a lot of the film.
Yeah.
And I think he's good at playing that in these really narrow limits that early Smith set out with the screenplay and Pierce set out with the direction. Charles Pierce. Prine's good at working within those limits, which I think is a sign of a great actor when they can kind of work within those limits and still make it work, even though it really shouldn't work. A lot of his stuff shouldn't work, and it does because he's so good.
Yeah. And once we are introduced to the U.S. Marshal that ends up being put on the case, he and the marshal are teamed up, and the marshal never downplays his efforts. He really thinks he's a smart guy, and he takes his advice to heart. So, yeah, he's a good character.
Right, absolutely.
Captain Wells, played by Jason Darnell, tries to question Linda, but she and Sammy are both heavily sedated. Sammy was beaten over the head with a blunt object. A doctor, played by John Stroud, fills him in on Linda's injuries.
Did he rape her, Doc?
No, there was no evidence of rape. But I can tell you that her back, stomach, and breasts were heavily bitten.
Bitten?
Literally chewed. If I can help you anymore, give me a call.
Thank you, Doc.
Ramsey and Wells tell Sheriff Barker, played by Robert Aquino, that they have no witnesses or leads, just that the guy was hooded and strong as hell. Griffin wants to warn the town's high school students to avoid parking on lonely roads. Well, here we go. Director Charles B. Pierce plays Patrolman A.C. Sparkplug Benson. He takes a call from a lady named Mrs. Kiner as the rest of the crew discuss informing the students of the attacker.
Patrolman Benson speaking. Yes, Mrs. Connor, this is Sparkplug. What's your problem?
I think you're right. We're going to have to get out to that school and warn those kids about staying out of lovers' lanes. You really think he's going to strike again?
I got a strong feeling he will.
Mrs. Connor, you don't have to put up with that crap.
We'll get the word out to all the patrol cars that if they see any of the kids on lovers' lanes, just, run them off.
Get him on the phone. Is that you, Connor? What the hell's wrong with you, boy? You try that again, and the Supreme Court of the United States ain't gonna be able to save your ass. Okay, Mrs. Connor, now you just settle down, because he promised me.
I gotta run. I'll see you, Chief. Guys.
And you lock up that mangy dog, because if he sicks him on me one more time, I'm gonna blow 6 holes in him.
Benson, how long have you been on the force?
4 months, sir.
God, it seems like it's been longer than that.
No, sir. 4 months this Tuesday.
Well, look, Benson, when a citizen calls in with a complaint, we don't threaten them. Well, from now on, if you get a phone call from Mrs. Kiner or from anybody in this town, simply quote legal procedure. And furthermore, you will not issue threats of any kind to anybody. Do you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Police Department? Mrs. Kiner.
Patrolman Benson. That does it, Mrs. Connor. You lock up that mangy dog, because I'm on my way.
I think Pierce's character here is very reminiscent of Sergeant Nash in Black Christmas.
Was Sergeant Nash the guy who was like, he didn't get the joke at one point?
Yes.
It's like, it's something dirty. Yeah. Something dirty, ain't it?
Yeah. Just a bumbling idiot that has to answer the phone, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sparkplug's hilarious in this movie.
He really is.
He is. He's probably in the wrong movie, but he's hilarious because he diverges so far from the tone. And it's really so weird that the director plays the part that diverges so far from the tone that I think really makes this movie effective.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if the rest of the movie had kind of been calibrated to the murder scenes, then this movie would be an incredible film.
Yeah.
Because there's a very specific atmosphere to those murder scenes that isn't really mimicked all that often throughout the rest of the film. Probably when we see who we think is the killer walking, we just see their feet at a few times. At the beginning of the movie, we saw that, and then we'll see it 1 or 2 more times later. That's the only time, really, for me, that it kind of mimics that kind of tension in those scenes.
I mean, the tone of this movie, too, it's like a town that's gripped with fear and people coming in, before the sun goes down, locking their doors, shutting their windows, just a town just completely, paranoid with fear that this guy's going to come and get him. But then whenever Mr. Pierce is on screen, it just immediately jumps into like Dukes of Hazzard territory with the zanier parts.
Yeah.
He's like Roscoe P. Coltrane,
He is. And it takes on like one of those tones from those movies from the 70s, like, the Georgia Peaches or Dixie Dynamite. Movies like that were just all shucks cracker movies, And this movie, I think because the tense tone is so effective, it kind of almost renders that ineffective as being part of the movie. But watching this movie, I was thinking to myself, what's the over-under on the Coen brothers having seen this movie back in the day and said, we can fucking do that better?
Yeah.
Like, we could, because can you imagine this movie, this story in their hands? Because it's kind of close to No Country for Old Men. Is, you know, there's a similar kind of vibe there.
Right.
But this feels like a dry run for something like a No Country for Old Men, where they take it and say, we can smooth out these hard border lines and make this one cohesive tone.
And they could make that character funny without going too far with it, too.
Right, absolutely. Really, Woody Harrelson's part in No Country for Old Men kind of is a distant second cousin, twice removed, maybe married his own cousin version of Sparkplug. You know what I mean? Like, he's kind of comedic and he's dumber than he thinks he is, you know?
Yeah.
But he also has insights. So, he has, like, I think Sparkplug has flashes of brilliance, but then he's also a complete idiot for the rest of the time.
I think he's more like Garrett Dillahunt's character.
That's great. Yeah, that's better.
He's like the all shucks guy in the movie, basically.
Yeah, that's better. Yeah, that's much better. Yeah, you're exactly right. I quit.
I won, guys. I won. I did it.
Yeah.
The show is mine.
Next week, it will be me and my cat on the All Night Driving Picture Show.
Get out of bed, Hedgehog. We're doing it. It's my cat, Hedgehog. Yeah. 3 weeks after the attack, the cops still have no leads. Ramsey frets about it to Chief Sullivan, played by Jim City. He asks about sending out extra units to patrol Lover's Lane, but he says Captain Wells would have to approve it.
I like that shot of Ramsey staring out the window as it's just pouring down rain outside.
Yeah.
There are a few shots like that in this movie that are just really something. And they may even hold on those shots sometimes. Like this one, they hold just a little too long, you know?
Right.
I feel like it's a little too long, but there might be a reason for it. But you can't fault them. You have a good shot, you got a good shot.
Yeah.
You know?
That kind of shot, too. You get a good actor like him to do it, and it's a really nice-looking scene.
Yeah.
Or you get the guy from Night Ranger doing it in his music video, and it's a totally different set of circumstances there.
It's execution dependent.
Right.
Very execution dependent.
Yeah. That evening, another couple, Buddy Turner, played by Rick Hildreth, and Emma Lou Cook, played by Misty West, are driving down a country road in the pouring rain. Ramsey's on the same road and sees the tire tracks. He gets out to investigate and hears a gunshot in the distance. He sees Buddy's car and calls for backup. The car is empty, and then he hears more gunshots in the distance. He takes off on foot and finds Buddy's body in a ditch, and then sees Emma tied face first to a tree. She's bloodied with bite marks on her exposed back. The attacker, who the narrator has dubbed the Phantom, is walking toward his car, and Ramsey is struggling through a boggy marsh to get to him. The Phantom drives away before Ramsey can get a shot off. Both victims were murdered.
The second attack by the killer sent a wave of cold fear sweeping across the city. Within 24 hours after the town got word of the killing, every gun store had sold out of weapons. And by Tuesday morning, May 26th, locksmiths were flooded for orders for new locks, deadbolts, and safety chains as the news of the killing attracted nationwide attention. No motive could be found, and it seemed that the killer might attack anybody he stumbled across. A universal fear spread among the people in this city and surrounding areas. Perhaps everyone secretly or openly wondered, am I, or someone close to me, his next victim? Texarkana looked normal during the daylight hours, but everyone dreaded sundown.
Back at the station, Ramsey received some good news.
We haven't been able to come up with a damn thing, and we've got to have some help. I want the best criminal investigator you've got. Okay, when? We'll be there to meet him. Thanks very much. They're really stirred up in Austin. We're getting the most famous criminal investigator in the country assigned to this case.
You don't mean that fellow they call the Lone Wolf of the Texas Rangers?
That's right.
The big man himself, Captain J.D. Morales, living legend, the most famous ranger in the history of Texas.
The dialogue in the car outside the theater between Buddy and Emmylou is awful. I mean, it's just brutal to watch. And I'm telling you, if you rub those performances together, you could probably make a fire because they're so wooden.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like, oh, my God. I felt bad for them having to deliver it because, you know, it's like the dialogue in this movie for the most part is like a rock-afire explosion of exposition. You know, it's just like boom, boom, exposition bombs going off everywhere. And they're not disguised in conflict. And really, a lot of the exposition in this scene is just to set up these two characters who are going to be dead in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, they could do a lot more of that in just kind of offhanded lines, glancing blows. And yet they sit out there in the rain, in this car, and talk for like 30 seconds about how he was in Japan and how the Japanese women know how to please a man. I mean, good God, you know.
Right.
How many illegitimate children did this guy leave behind in World War II?
Yeah.
There's a lot of thinking that you can see in this movie, and it's not thinking like characters thinking. It's actors going, okay, she says her line. Now I say my line. She says her line. I say my line. They're not listening to each other at all. They aren't listening to each other in that scene, you know.
These are all pretty much local Texarkana actors too, aren't they?
I think a lot of them were locals, yeah. Well, I don't know about Prine. I think Prine might have done some other stuff. And, of course, Ben Johnson, Academy Award winner, I think. I think he might have won for Last Picture Show. But, yeah, I think a lot of them were locals. Also, the part of the scene where Ramsey goes to chase the killer down, day for night shots, that drives me insane. I mean, they have so many night shots, and I know it was maybe a budget thing or whatever, but that drives me nuts. Because this guy's using a flashlight. The flashlight clearly doesn't work because there's too much light. And so when he points it at Buddy's body in the ditch, why are you pointing that, dude? You can see that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that just bothers the fuck out of me. I can't stand it. I just don't like it. I don't like it. When one of my favorite filmmakers does it, it drives me nuts. I can't stand it, you know?
He doesn't like it, folks.
Yeah. Finally... You don't mean that fella they call the lone wolf with the Texas Rangers, Captain J.D. Morales, living legend, the most famous ranger in the history of Texas, Ramsey says as he stares off into the wild blue yonder, which is the other side of the fucking room, right?
Yeah,
like, he reminds me of that old doctor on Scrubs in that one episode who delivers a baby and says, another soul in the fight against communism. You know? It's like, oh my God. This
Poor
is
Prine
terrible.
did not deserve that scene at all.
Not at all. He deserved better.
Yeah.
And you know, he did as well as he could do with that line.
He did.
I mean, there's really no way to deliver that line that it doesn't come out sounding either completely stupid and boring or like you're trying to describe Superman. You know, like there's no middle ground. So he did what he could do with it. But
I'd almost like to have seen him play it sarcastically rather than earnestly like that.
That's good. That's good. Or you know, honestly, if there had been some kind of conflict where he felt like he could do the job and they didn't need to call that guy in, that probably could have fueled that kind of sarcasm or anger. Or if he had spit the line, that probably could have worked. But see as how we've seen Prine's performance at the beginning, where we know he feels like he's in over his head from the very get-go, then it would work. But if they had set that up a little bit, it probably could have worked. So,
like after a couple scenes, they realize they can work well together, and that whole sarcastic tone of his goes away at that point.
Right. And I think, too, I'm trying to think back here. I don't think there's a lot of conflict between law enforcement in this movie.
No.
You know, because if you think of Texarkana, I mean, it's a town that's almost literally cut in half. Texas line, Kansas line, or Arkansas line. You know, there's a line between the two, and there are halves. So I don't know exactly how much interagency rivalry took place for real, you know?
Yeah.
But I know that I think only maybe one of the bodies was found in Arkansas and the rest were on the Texas side or vice versa. So there's none of that, really. We probably could have used some of that. This probably would have been a good place to do it through Prime, because he was probably about the only guy on that whole cast who could have played it.
Right.
Or maybe the captain's toupee probably could have played it pretty well. That toupee did a yeoman's job in this movie. It was a damn good toupee.
It's one of those toupees where when the wind blows, it waves at you. That sort of thing.
Yeah, it's neighborly.
Yeah.
it's a neighborly toupee.
Hello, neighbor.
How are you doing?
If you remember our coverage of Dillinger, you'll remember Ben Johnson, the G-Man himself, and here he is playing Captain Morales. Captain Morales, what is he? United States Marshal, is that right?
Yeah, he's a marshal, I do believe.
Marshal.
Or is he a marshal or a Texas Ranger?
Might be, yeah,
I think
Texas
he's a
Ranger.
Texas Ranger. Yeah, he's Texas Ranger.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ranger, Marshal, yeah.
He's a cop, dude.
He's a cop, yeah. He's a high-ranking officer.
We should call him that throughout the rest of the episode. High-ranking officer J.D. Morales.
Ramsey picks him up at the train station. The press and some fans are there to meet him as well. Morales buys a stogie at a newsstand, presumably to smoke after he kills the Phantom.
Ben Johnson and his cigars. What is the oral fetish here?
No kidding.
I don't understand what's going on with Ben Johnson. The old lady giving him the boutonniere at the station was, and the tip to the blind pencil salesman. That's some hokey bullshit, son.
Right.
That's like, look how revered and nice this man is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He won't kill the dog.
Right. He's definitely one for appearances, that's for sure, as we find out here shortly.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, too, because the character is based on this guy named Captain Manuel Trezasas, Lone Wolf Gonzalez.
Whew.
Yeah.
It's a lot of syllables. Yeah.
Yeah. I like how they shot Ben Johnson with the press here first thing as soon as he gets to town, because some of the people who have interviewed Gonzalez, the real guy's contemporaries, say that he really didn't do a whole lot of police work, that he was the guy who kind of was the face to the press, but he kind of took other people's detective work and said, hey, look what I did. So I like that they kind of did that here. And then later on, we'll see Morales say, well, I'm the only one to deal with the press. And at the time, it's just because it seems like he wants to make sure that the right information gets out and staves off a panic. But if you know the real story, you also kind of see, oh, this guy wants to be the face of the investigation.
Yeah.
You know? Which is kind of interesting because that also kind of connects back to Purvis and Dillinger, where we talked about Ben Johnson's part in that. There was a little bit of a press component in that, too. So
Right. At the police station, Morales lays down the law. Things will be done his way, and he's the only one that talks to the press. Bingo.
There you go.
Morales is bringing in Sergeant Mal Griffin, played by Jimmy Clem, to be his right-hand man. Wells also offers Benson to be his driver. Benson being old Sparkplug. On the way out, a prominent citizen asks Morales how he would be conducting his investigation. Morales tells him to get bent. You know, talked about him being a country gentleman up to that point. And suddenly he's like, hey, fuck off, pal.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. If you want to know about police investigation, go get the Police Detective magazine at the newsstand down the way.
Right. You know, at first when I see this prominent citizen or whatever he is, I'm thinking to myself, could this possibly be the killer and he's trying to get a leg up on the investigation? So, you know, by asking, how are you going to conduct your investigation so I know how to avoid you later on down the line sort of thing.
Right.
But then later on, that's all quelled. So, but...
yeah, but you know, like one detail that's in this is I think that this prominent citizen, I think his name is like George Hartman, I think is the character's name, played by Mason Andrus. But I think the thing about him that I found interesting was that I think he has blue eyes, which is the big striking feature of the killer. You know, because the only thing we could see are the eyes, and they're very striking in the movie. Striking, it sounds like I'm in love with this killer. He's pretty hot. I mean, you know, oh well.
Yeah.
But they didn't really go down a lot of avenues as far as like speculating who the killer is.
Right.
But, you know, like details are interesting. The shoes, you know, the eyes, some of the things that Pierce kind of focuses on throughout the movie and tries to take you, kind of give you a hint of a red herring, I think is really interesting. One other thing I just thought of too, because, you know, you did talk again about the whole press thing. I thought of this quote that I got, and I have it right here. It's from Deputy Tillman Johnson, who's pretty much the basis for the Deputy Ramsey character in this movie.
Okay.
And it's from a 1986 article in the Texarkana Gazette. And this is what he says about Gonzalez, you know, the basis for Morales in this movie, Ben Johnson's character.
Mm-hmm.
He says, whenever he came down the stairs from his hotel room, he called for the press. He was a showman, he was a handsome man, I'd say, and he made a good appearance, and of course, he had a reputation for being a killer. So the press all followed Gonzalez. Deputy Johnson also said of Gonzalez, no, he didn't do any real police work himself. He'd get in that car and ride around and ask a lot of questions about what the other officers had found. Then he'd release it to the press like it was his information. It got to where, after a while, some officers wouldn't tell him anything. I mean, imagine if the officers had felt comfortable sharing information. They might have solved this crime.
Yeah.
You know?
But, yeah, I mean, an officer who's a glory hound and stealing everybody's work, and then they don't want to tell him anything. You got all kinds of miscommunication going on there, and that just makes the case unworkable at that point, I would think.
Yeah, well, it's almost like when I'm in a hospital, right? The doctors are the ones who get the glory, but the nurses are the ones who know it all.
Right.
The nurses are the ones that you want to make friends with, that you want to talk to, because they've seen everything, and the doctors come in and swoop in and say, pluck, pluck, pluck. Not to say doctors aren't talented and educated. Of course they are. But the nurses are the boots on the ground. The officers here are the boots on the ground. They're the ones who know the ins and outs. They saw the scene as it was, you know, as fresh as could possibly be. So actually, I wonder if they would have solved the case definitively if Gonzalez hadn't been such a hound, you know.
Right.
But then we wouldn't be watching this movie necessarily, right? Because it wouldn't be an unsolved mystery. So
right.
You know.
So as we saw earlier, Sparkplug has been volunteered to drive around Morales and Ramsey, and immediately he loses the keys to the car. And the keys to the car happen to be on the key ring where they belong in the office.
Under the car number.
Right.
Exactly
Under the car number,
where they're supposed to be.
So then he hops back in the car and begins to drive him around, and he's driving like a bat out of hell to where Morales has to set him straight and say, hey, man, you know, quit driving like an asshole, basically, is what it comes down to. Yeah.
Jesus. I meant slow down, not stop, for Christ's sakes. You just got two controls on this damn thing, wide open and stop?
Well, I figured you was in a hurry, sir.
Well, I am in a hurry. What'd you say your name was?
Patrolman A.C. Benson. Some folks call me Sparkplug.
Well, now, Sparkplug, I'd kind of like to survive this investigation. Unless I tell you it's an emergency, I want you to observe the speed limits and traffic signs. No sirens and no red lights. You understand that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Captain.
The police interview a man attempting to confess to the murders. He calls himself the Phantom. Over his shoulder, Morales shakes his head no. It's just another nut bar.
Now, at first I wondered why. Now I understand. Because the guy's using a term that the press came up with.
Right.
So that's probably why Morales. At first I'm thinking, how the hell is he just blowing this off? But I kind of feel like that's one piece of explanation that probably would have been kind of cool, because I think it would have been an avenue to explore.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Right.
Because I think it's in some ways kind of explored much more effectively in like Zodiac. Both that and the obsession with investigation of a crime, which neither of those things are really explored in this movie.
Right. Right.
And now, intermission. Refreshment time.
Live in concert on the big screen at the all-night drive-in picture show, it's your favorites, Critter McGinnis and the Sour Pickle Boys, featuring Big Wayne. Now appearing one night only in a special drive-in production on July 4th when the sun goes down. Note, this is a reschedule of the July 4th concert scheduled in 2018 due to the hangnail epidemic that plagued the band, and we don't even talk about 2019 due to Big Wayne's legal situation. There will be no refunds issued for these shows, so don't ask. Featuring all the hits. The only bones she jumped were attached to fried chicken. You can't smoke anymore at the football game. I may not be much, but I'm your stepdad. She must be at the other Dollar General. And Wagon Wheel. Tickets are $100 per car load, payable in American currency only. No Camel Cash will be accepted at this time. Critter McGinnis and the Sour Pickle Boys featuring Big Wayne. Now appearing one night only on the big screen at the all-night drive-in picture show.
This event has been rescheduled for July 27th. 2 minutes until showtime.
Coming soon to this drive-in theater.
He's been away for 8 years. Now he's coming home.
Speaking for myself, I'd like to say that the whole experience has made a better man, a better officer, and a better American out of me. Thank you very much.
But the world has changed.
I've been with another man.
You don't remember me, do you?
And he's changed too.
Pull it up in the air like you're going to take me clear on up to the ceiling.
All right. This.
Now, higher, man, higher, till you hear the bones starting to crack. That's it. Higher! Come on, higher! Higher!
It's going to take some time to readjust.
Charlie! Ah!
Shut up!
Your husband, he's got a whole bag of silver dollars, and if I don't get him, he's going to die.
No, don't. Please don't.
Wish you could remember something. A name, a face, an accent, anything.
I can't.
Can't just let it slide, Major. They don't have any right to live.
There's a storm brewing in this man. They took his arm. They took his family and his soul. His anger is building, and it's going to explode. Now, from Paul Schrader, the author of Taxi Driver, comes a new and shattering film about a man poised on the brink of violence. Rolling Thunder, starring William Devane as Charles Rain. He has a purpose. He has a plan. It's only a matter of time.
I found them. Who? The man who killed my son. I'll just get my gear. There's the 4 that came into my home, and there's 8 or 10 others. Let's go clean them up.
Rolling Thunder.
And now, on with the show.
It's been 3 weeks since the murders. 3 weeks prior to that was the original attack on Sammy and Linda. Ramsey has a theory that another attack will happen the day after next. Morales thinks he may be onto something.
The setting for this little scene is based on one of Gonzalez, a.k.a. Morales' real quirks, in that I guess that dude got a shave and a haircut every single day. I mean, you never know, I guess, when the flashbulbs are going to go off, so you gotta be ready. Of course, here, though, he's getting a haircut that he just gets up like, that'll be great. I'm like, what if that dude, like, left you an inch heavy on one side of the back of your neck? You're not going to know that, you know?
Right.
He could have left you patchy like a mangy-ass dog on one of your cheeks. You're not going to know it. You didn't even look in the mirror, you know?
Yeah, and here's Ben Johnson, you know, getting a haircut, and he's got very thinning hair on top, very wispy.
Yeah.
A shave I can understand, but a haircut, no.
And shave yourself, you lazy bastard.
No shit.
Like,
yeah.
I understand you got to give a dude a job. I'm glad that he actually pays the guy. They show it. That's cool.
Yeah. Get yourself a Gillette and do it in your room like everybody else does.
Right. You want to be a man, do it a straight razor dry.
That's right.
Do it First Blood style.
Morales wants to set up decoys on an empty road. Sparkplug volunteers to be a decoy, but he doesn't really know what he's volunteering for, which is dressing up in drag. Morales preps Sparkplug and the other homely decoys for the evening's events. Sparkplug and Sergeant Griffin are riding together. Griffin tries to make it look realistic.
Unit able?
Unit able. Roger, Sparkplug. I'm set.
How about you, Walt? You there?
I'm here and looking at you, and you look stunning.
Up ears and out.
Yeah, Sparky. Yeah, Sparky. Don't get excited now.
What the hell you think you're doing?
You heard the captain. We're supposed to make this look good. Now, we're supposed to be lovers. I might get a little hugging before the night's over.
You watch that hand. What the hell's wrong with you? Watch the hand. Gee.
What I can't understand is how come that was bigger than this?
I'd like to know what difference it makes. You think I'm gonna let the son of a bitch come in and funnel him before I blow his head off?
I don't guess it makes any difference. It just looks like to me you run out of air on that left one before you got through.
Just mind your business and keep a sharp lookout.
Griffin squeezes and pops his left balloon breast. Pierce is hilarious. Pierce is hilarious. Up yours and out.
He really is funny here.
He is. He's got great comic timing.
Yeah, and he and the guy who plays Sergeant Griffin, like, they have good chemistry together and stuff.
Yeah, they do.
The decoy thing in this was real, but they didn't do it until after the murder that takes place during this sequence. Pretty much nothing about this story is what really happened. So even though they say the events are true, the names have been changed, it's like not true. I think it was more like 4 weeks between the first attack and the second attack. And then the second, third attacks were like 3 weeks apart, I think. And the last one might have been 3 weeks. But I don't know of any law enforcement person or newspaper person still around in Texarkana thinks that all of the attacks were actually related to one another.
So this is the second movie we've covered with Ben Johnson that's mostly fabricated.
It's his fault, I think. It's his fault. Something wrong with Ben Johnson.
He knows how to pick him, doesn't he?
He knows how to pick him. But it did happen. The decoy thing did happen, though. But they also used mannequins, which I don't think that they showed in this. And the other thing, which this I don't think would ever be done today, but you could never put it past law enforcement, they also used real teenagers as bait. And apparently they were Texas Rangers kids.
Son, I got a job for you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You want an extra big Christmas gift this year? Should you make it to Christmas?
Yeah.
Let's talk about you being a decoy.
I need you and your girlfriend to hang out with me tonight.
Yeah.
Don't ask any questions. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. The other thing that's interesting, too, and I don't think that they covered this in the movie. They might actually cover this at one part of the movie. I can't quite remember. But I know that a lot of the people who were still going to lovers' lanes, because, of course, we know that if you present people with danger of any kind, they will not protect themselves by avoiding that danger or, doing things like, wear a mask or something. But people who
preposterous.
I know, exactly. It's pure fiction, right? But these people, some of them were packing heat. And so I know that Tillman, the guy who Ramsey's based on, he said at one point he walked up to a car and announced himself, and this lady who was in the car was tangled up with her boyfriend and told him that he was lucky he announced himself because she had her hand on like a pistol. So people were packing heat, but it's kind of like, why not just find someplace else to go?
Yeah. Which pistol did she have her hand on?
Well, she had her hand on .22 pistol. There is no report on where her other hand was. So it might have been holding a rocket. I don't know.
She was on top of her boyfriend. I'm just clarifying.
Yeah.
It's also prom night, and that seems like it would be your biggest concern rather than dressing up officers in drag, but okay.
Yeah.
Morales wants patrols set up in the school parking lot when the prom lets out. Which begs the question, was it commonplace for Old Lang Syne to play at the end of a prom?
And a prayer. I don't ever remember
a
prayer at the prom.
Lord, please let none of these young ladies get pregnant tonight.
Yeah. Let them all stay chaste. Good Lord.
Let them be safe in a number of ways.
And then once they're born, we can forget all about them and make them just, die from poverty because we don't give a shit about them once they are born. Lord.
Politics. A young couple, Peggy and Roy, played by Cindy Butler and Steve Lyons, decide that making out on a deserted road is more important than living, so they head out for Boners and Blood.
Yes.
That's the next movie we're covering, Boners and Blood.
That's right. That's right. We're going to cover Boners and Blood 1 through 24.
Yeah.
We're just going to run the whole gamut. That's really the rest of our year from here on out.
They only run 20 minutes apiece, so.
Yeah, right. So we're told. I mean, I've seen running times that say they're 110 minutes, but we only get about 20 minutes in.
Yeah.
But the teachers sneaking some hooch into the punch in the prom are just so terrible.
Oh, yeah.
The acting is just awful. It's like something that was in a bad silent movie. You know?
Right.
Like,
looks on her face like, ooh, you're bad.
Yeah, you bad girl. You know?
You're bad. Look at you.
It might be one of the same women in the prom scene, but the switchboard operator in the police station early on when Sparkplug's fighting with Mrs. Kiner, her look at one point when she sends the call over to him is just awful. It's like, it's Pierce's fault. He directed the movie. So then you have to say, what are you thinking? You know, what?
Right.
How do you think that fits in? You know? It's just so weird, man. It's just so weird.
Randy wonders if his 3-week theory was correct. He said it was raining on the 2 nights previous. Maybe that was another factor. Then we cut to the Phantom on the prowl. Guess old son was right the first time.
Old son?
After making out, Phantom grabs the door, flings Roy out of the car, and the car crashes. He clubs Roy over the head. Peggy screams, and a chase ensues through the woods. The Phantom catches up and carries her back to where he left Roy, who's still alive at this point. He ties her face first to a tree. Roy flees, but the Phantom shoots him twice and kills him. So this next part, I should point out that Peggy is actually a member of the prom orchestra. They had the school band playing the prom, and she plays the trombone, so that's where this next one comes into play here. The Phantom takes the trombone, ties a knife to the end of the hand slide, and begins to stab her in the back repeatedly while mocking the playing of the trombone, which is really dumb.
It's so elaborate. And here's a question I had watching this, okay? Mm-hmm. And maybe you can help me with this, because you are my moral compass often. I don't have one. I borrow yours from time to time.
Yeah.
So all of the murders pertaining to this movie, except for maybe the final one, bother me because they are not the way things happen. None of the women that this animal killed were ever tied to a tree. None of them were bitten. You know, none of that. Attacked, killed, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And Betty Jo Booker, the young girl that Peggy Loomis was based on, did not die this way with this trombone stabbing thing. She did actually play the saxophone in this band. They were playing like a VFW dance that night in real life. And they were a band of teenagers because the teenagers had to take over this band after all the men went off to war in the draft. So that's why she was playing in that band as a teenager at an adult dance. And the saxophone was important because the saxophone went missing, and then later on somebody tried to pawn one in somewhere else, like Corpus Christi, I think, and they went and tried to find that guy and pick him up because they thought it might have been this saxophone that was missing, that they thought this killer took like a trophy or whatever.
Yeah.
But the question I have is that, do you think the idea of staging these killings and assaults as more dramatic and less factual and more sensational, I guess, than they really are, does that disrespect the people who were attacked and killed and their families?
I think it kind of does, to a point anyway. I can understand trying to maybe make it a little more elaborate just because it is a movie, you know.
But dramatic.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I think that even though he didn't tie the women to a tree face first like he did, I think that's a pretty chilling setup, you know, because, I mean, with the girl has no idea what's coming next. You know?
Right.
And so I think that setup is really a good one for this type of movie. But yeah, I can see what you're saying, though. I think it is probably very disrespectful to the people that died. But then again, the families of the people that died probably don't want to watch this movie anyway, you know?
Yeah, but you know, that's the weird thing is that they screened, I think as of 2013, they were still screening this movie at the end of a summer film series. They did that every year in Texarkana. The Parks and Rec department did. So, in fact, the quote-unquote sequel to this movie is kind of a meta thing that takes off from the idea that they screened the movie. mean, as we'll see at the end of the movie here, there is a meta moment where you see people lined up to see the movie The Town That Dreaded Sundown, which is the movie that we're watching. It's kind of this weird, little bit of a mind-bending thing. And the sequel is based on that like they show this movie every year in the park. It's kind of like a tourist thing. It's kind of like, hey, Roswell, we do the alien thing every year. And hey, in Texarkana, we talk about these people who were brutally fucking murdered. and we watch a movie about it, while we sell hot dogs and slushies and shit. Yeah. So I don't know. I think the fact of the matter is that this movie is pretty much not factual in a lot of the details. And yet, because it's billed as an absolute true story with just the names changed, these details, like the trombone thing, have become part of the lore of these people's killings. And it's like, no, they weren't killed in that fashion. So to me, that extra layer of sensationalism sometimes feels disrespectful. I mean, I don't want to... What is it that assholes are saying now? Virtue signal or whatever it's called.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not really into that, but at the same time, I do wonder about those things because I'm like, if you're going to bill it as a true story, to me, it seems like there's a responsibility there. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, I don't have more to add to that.
Yeah. Well, I just said a lot, but
I'm like Bob Euchre's color commentator who says nothing.
Yeah.
He's the best in the business, folks. Morales is none too happy that their operation failed and that there is no evidence. He tells him to rope off the area and comb that bitch till they find some evidence. The murders have made national news, and all the big newspapers and TV networks are swarming the town. A reward for information leading up to the conviction of the killer is now up to $8,000. Morales and the rest of the police team have dinner with the local prison psychiatrist, Dr. Kress, played by the movie screenwriter Earl E. Smith. Kress thinks the killer has an edge on the cops.
Doctor, we're going to have to get a better fix on who this killer is. What motivates him? How he thinks.
This man is definitely a sadist, motivated by a strong sex drive. I guess you realize, Captain, that the odds are against you.
Well, what do you mean, Dr. Kress?
I'd say this man is between 35 and 40 years old, highly intelligent. The odds are at least 2 to 1 that he'll never be caught.
Well, I sure as hell don't buy that.
Well, I'm just going by the statistical profile he fits within, Captain. This thing has become a game with him, The fact that this massive manhunt, the largest ever assembled in this area, is after him, well, it's a source of pleasure to him. Makes him feel important. He has all the odds on his side. He knows exactly what's going on in the investigation, and you know practically nothing about him.
Excuse me, Doctor. I wonder if I could ask you some direct questions and get some blunt, straight answers.
Well, I'll try.
He chewed the girl's back, neck, and breast. Why?
Sexual satisfaction.
He didn't force the girls to have sexual intercourse.
That's not what excites him. He's abnormal.
Is he insane?
Oh, yes. But not in the usual sense. He could be living what appears to be a normal life right here in Texarkana. He could even be one of your more prominent citizens.
Well, do you know any reason why he hasn't taken any money off of his victims?
That's not his motive. It's like asking why he used a trombone the way he did with the Loomis girl. He has this strange, sadistic imagination. I suppose he does his things because they please him in some way.
Do you think he'll attack again on schedule?
Not necessarily. I would say in view of the intensity of the manhunt, he'll probably change his pattern. He may go back into a normal pattern, go back into his shell, not be heard from again for years.
Yeah, that's what makes this case so damn frustrating. This murdering pervert could be passing us on the street 10 times a day. I don't know.
Great insight.
Yeah.
He's got an edge on you because you haven't caught him yet. Oh, okay. In other news, the sky is blue because it's not cloudy.
Right. And Morales is like, oh, is that so, asshole? Huh?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we do have an edge on him.
Yeah, really?
You son of a bitch. I think we're doing just fine. Thank you very much.
Hey, waiter, bring this guy steak so I can choke him with it.
Right.
God.
Toward the end of their conversation, we see the backside of a man with dark hair get up from the table and walk toward the exit. As Morales says that the pervert could be passing them on the street 10 times a day, we see the camera focus on the mystery man's feet shifting as if being called a pervert struck a nerve. The man turns and exits the restaurant, his face never revealed. The police interview a man named Rainbow Johnson, played by Roy Lee Brown. I do love the name Rainbow Johnson.
Me too. Me too.
It's fantastic. He picked up the man he suspects is the killer on the side of the road, believing him to be a stranded motorist. The story the man gave Rainbow about where he left his car in relation to where he was picked up didn't match. The man pulled a gun on him and told him to take him to the next town. The killer said that he's already killed 5 people, what's one more? He took Rainbow's license and said he knows where he lives, and he'd kill him if he ever said anything to anyone. Morales promised him police protection 24 hours a day.
I love Roy Lee Brown.
He's fantastic.
I want to see a whole movie, around this guy. I wanted to see this exchange that he had, even if we never saw the guy's face. You could do like a gun-crazy backseat kind of shot where it's just Roy Lee Brown talking to this guy, and this guy never showing us anything except his hair or whatever.
Right.
I would have loved to see something like that because he's so natural. And he delivers all of this exposition in this story in such a compelling way.
Yeah.
And this was the only movie he was ever in. I mean...
That's a crime.
It's just an absolute crime. The guy is amazing. Yeah. He's so good.
He's got character actor written all over him.
He really does.
Yeah.
He really does, man. So good.
Yeah. Morales, Ramsey, and Sparkplug are driving around discussing the case when they get a call about a robbery at a general store. They're close by, and Sparkplug puts his foot through the floor and hauls ass. We see a tall man with dark hair get into a green sedan, and that car kicks ass. This green sedan is awesome looking.
It's mint green.
It is. It's killer. I love it. He hears the sirens and takes off. They chase the man into the country, and cop cars appear from everywhere. We get a Keystone Cops quality chase with one car driving in circles and Sparkplug losing control of his car and driving into the bushes. An officer blocks the man's path, and the green sedan ends up in a ditch. Sparkplug gets back on the road and ends up driving off into a marsh next to the police cluster. Good Lord.
The slow-mo of the green sedan, right? Like it pulls around there, and it's like this badass car, and it's all slow-mo. And I'm thinking, oh, shit. Like, it's just a camera trick because the car wasn't going very fast, or it was, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think Pierce was setting it up because then they also do Sparkplug's cruiser in slow-mo, and that's hysterical. Like, that setup of Ledoux's car to pay off with Sparkplug's car in slow motion going off the road into the bushes. Finally getting back on the road. Oh, that's hysterical, dude. That's hilarious. Like,
all we needed was Waylon Jennings' narration during this scene, though.
How Sparkplug, he couldn't keep it in his pants or on the road, ladies and gentlemen. But friends, he always righted it when it counted.
All we needed was a pause in midair when he was jumping into the marsh. And, it looks like them boys are in a pickle now.
Yeah. We need, we don't need Waylon Jennings. We need a narration from Critter McGinnis.
Oh. Good old Critter McGinnis. Ah,
Critter
man,
McGinnis.
I can't wait for that show. Can't wait for that concert.
It's going to be a big boon for us.
Ramsey questions the man. His name is Eddie Ledoux, played by Joe Catalanato from Nolans. He doesn't know why they're chasing him, and he was only running from them because he was scared. He came to town to look for work, you see. Ramsey points out that his car is stolen. Another officer brings Rainbow to the scene, and he IDs Eddie. Eddie confesses to being the Phantom and says to bring the reporters, and he'll give a full confession. Out of earshot, Griffin and Morales both agree that he's not the killer. He's just looking for notoriety. Griffin says he'll take him back to the station, and Morales says to make sure there is no press there whatsoever. Those are my people, not his.
Yeah, what is Griffin doing with this dude in the back seat of the cruiser that's going to make him recant his confession? Like,
right.
We already know Griffin's handsy. He's a big man with a handlebar mustache. He's handsy.
I was going to give these a twist, and you're going to recant that story, sir.
No, sir, I'm not. Yes, sir, I am.
I recant.
And like you were saying, there's some Boss Hogg and Roscoe P. Coltrane energy between Morales and Sparkplug when they're trudging through all the mud and muck and everything. Yeah. There's a little bit going on there, you know.
No kidding. Time passes, and it's summertime. Outside of a store, a man in a black coupe pulls into a parking spot just as Helen Reed, played by Dawn Wells, who you may know as Mary Ann from Gilligan's Island, is leaving the store. She smiles at him before driving home.
Okay, I have a big question here.
Okay.
What the hell is hoop cheese?
I have no idea.
You see the sign on the outside says hoop cheese, like 25 cents or something. What is hoop cheese?
I have no idea. Is it cheese that's in like a ring? And if so, what's the point?
I don't know.
Maybe you use it like I don't know, to put chips in the middle of it or something. Like it's like cut the cheese pieces up and put crackers in the middle.
It seems fancy for Texarkana in the 40s to me. I say this from as a guy who comes from a family that is not fancy.
Right.
That sounds fancy. Your description sounds fancy. It also makes me think you might have gone soft.
So let me get this straight. You take a big bun, basically, and you dig it out and you put spinach dip in the middle of it. yeah. Sorry, that joke didn't land. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Hang on just a second.
Now, hang on just a minute.
Now, hang on just a minute. You mean to tell me that the taco shell is the bowl?
I ain't eating no bowl.
That's genius. To me, that's genius.
That's pretty good. Pretty good stuff.
Hoop cheese. If anybody knows what hoop cheese is, hit us up.
Yeah. We have an email address that no one ever uses unless it's spam. So, hey.
We have an email address that nobody ever uses because it's long as hell.
It really is.
I mean,
it really is.
We could have done like andips@gmail.com, but instead we spelled it all the way out.
Yeah.
We like to make things appear longer than they really are on the All That Dreaded Picture Show.
It was long until the accident.
I didn't think that sword was that sharp. I was sure it wasn't that sharp. Why do I have to keep paying for this and paying for this?
Later that evening, Helen hears something outside of her house. Her husband Floyd doesn't hear it. We see the phantom outside the window. He shoots Floyd in the back of the neck through the window. As she tries to call the operator, he tears through the screen door of their house, shoots her twice in the face and head, but she doesn't die. She falls to the floor, but then crawls to the back door and escapes the house. She ends up in the cornfield. He follows her trail of blood and the sound of her whimpering. She crawls to a neighbor's house and bangs on the door. A barking dog has given away her location. Finally, a man comes to the door with a shotgun and sees her lying on the ground. The phantom retreats. The narrator said Helen survived and was in critical condition. No one wanted to go out after dark, and deliveries were only done during daylight hours. 150 police cars patrolled at night.
This last attack is pretty close to the way it really happened.
Mm-hmm.
The woman that Helen is based on was shot in the face twice and shattered her jawbone, I think, and did crawl out to get help. The only difference here is that in this, they make the killer look like he's using the same pistol that he used in the other attacks. When in the real attack, they think it was a rifle. It was totally different caliber, and it was a rifle. So it is a little bit different. But otherwise, this happened like he did shoot the guy, or the attacker did shoot the guy through the window of his own house. Right, came right up behind him, shot him. I think he might have shot him twice as well, as he was like listening to the radio or whatever. Wow, paycheck for Dawn Wells. I think she was
kidding.
like 2 days on this movie, and
was this pre-Gilligan? It was, wasn't it?
No, this is post.
This
is post Gilligan, yeah, because Gilligan's Island actually started in the mid '60s. So, Gilligan probably was done, but I think they might have done some movies. So, I don't know how late the movies for Gilligan went, where they were actually rescued and then re-stranded or whatever. But
man, that's a tiny role for her for, right after a really popular show like that.
Well, I wonder if they maybe couldn't afford what she was asking for.
Yeah. Maybe.
So, and she pretty much had no lines, really. I mean,
Not
she
really,
had just maybe like 1 or 2 lines, but nothing big. Maybe they just couldn't afford it and just needed the name,
Yeah.
So
maybe. The killer is 4 days behind schedule. Ramsey and Morales suspect that the Phantom has either ended his spree, moved on to another town, or was arrested for another crime. Morales admits that they likely aren't going to catch him. Then a call comes in that a stolen black coupe was discovered, and they are off to check it out. The car fits the description of a car close to the scene of Buddy and Emmylou's murders. Ramsey is confident that it's the same car. They find it next to some woods that lead to a spot where kids used to park and have dirty sex. Ramsey and Morales grab their rifles and head out into the woods on foot. They find a sand pit and they see a set of footprints. It's not Jesus's. Morales sees the Phantom in broad...
You don't know that.
I don't know that, no.
Because he was carrying you the whole time.
He was. He's carrying me. Morales sees the Phantom in broad daylight with the bag on his head. He does. Why does the Phantom have a bag on his head during the daylight?
And he's all alone. He thinks he's all alone, and he has a bag. He's committed. He's committed to it. It's a look.
Yeah. He ducks behind some brush and points his pistol toward the killer. The Phantom spots Ramsey, who hasn't seen the killer yet. Morales takes a shot but misses him. The Phantom takes off running, and Ramsey and Morales give chase. On the other side of the pit, a train's a-comin'. The Phantom sprints across the tracks to the other side of the train and runs alongside it. Morales and Ramsey shoot under the train, trying to take his leg out, and Morales succeeds. The train finally passes, but the killer has disappeared. Morales calls for the bloodhounds.
The bloodhounds that were brought in quickly lost the scent in this murky bayou and the vast backwater wilderness of southern Arkansas. Some say of these swamps that most men who go in never come out. But there was little doubt that the Phantom Killer plunged deep into these swamps that late fall of 1946. What happened to the Phantom Killer, no one really knows. Some believe he was convicted of another crime, and today he is still serving his term in a Kansas prison. Some believe he died here in these swamps. Texarkana today still looks pretty much the same. And if you should ask people here on the streets what they believe happened to the Phantom Killer, most would say that he is still living here and is walking free.
I like the chase with Ramsey and Morales and the Phantom, even though absolutely none of that took place. None of that took place. They never saw him or anything.
It's a good scene, though.
It is a great scene. It's probably, to me, one of the better scenes in the whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because it, again, matches the tone of the attacks, but in broad daylight. Because even though it is kind of stupid that he's wearing his full denims and his mask in the broad daylight, it does help to maintain that tone because it's so weird and striking to see this guy on top of a little hill in this getup.
Right.
Especially then we also see him kind of trudging through the swamp, I think, a little bit. It is a very striking image to see it in the daylight. And they needed a way to button this movie up, because how do you button it up otherwise? Otherwise you jump from Morales saying he would probably never be caught, which I also liked because he's like, do you want an official opinion or do you want my personal opinion?
Right.
And I like the difference between those two things.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something they could have made more of a meal out of between Morales and Ramsey in this movie. But
well, it's kind of nice too seeing the Macho Dick finally admit that it's like, you know what, we probably aren't going to catch this dude after all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you could have made a case to go from there to whatever we see next with people lining up to see this movie that's based on these killings in their town or whatever. But I like this chase scene a lot. I mean, I think that it really kind of added this extra little snap of action here at the end that really makes me remember the movie a bit more fondly, honestly, when I think about this movie. It's one of the big things I think of.
Yeah.
I thought having the people line up outside the movie theater showing the actual movie that we were watching, the whole meta thing we were talking about earlier, I thought that was a nice touch, you know? And the poster outside the movie was for Winterhawk, which is another Charles Pierce movie, which self-promotion is always a good thing. That's funny.
Sure.
I also thought that this was great because you see what could be the Killer Shoes, and this time he's limping a little bit.
Yeah.
I thought that was a good way to kind of go out on this movie.
Right.
If you want to know the straight dope behind what was going on in this movie, there is a documentary that I think you could get on Amazon Prime with a subscription called Murder in the Moonlight. And it's a long-ass 97 minutes. But it's got some interesting stuff in it about the suspects and about the theories. And, I mean, there are like, I think 2 or 3 people who are kind of in contention for who the killer was. But there's one guy that was probably... The storyline in this movie with the guy who stole the car and Rainbow Johnson, like, you know, said he's going to kill Rainbow Johnson or whatever. The Rainbow Johnson part of the story, I don't know how true that is. But that basic storyline... That was the guy, and I can't, his name is escaping me at this point, but I think his name was like Yule something. That guy is the guy that they think probably at least committed the middle 2 attacks of the 4, I think, that happened in the movie. The last one, they think it was, you know, with Helen getting shot in the face and climbing through the cornfield and her husband getting shot in their house. They think that might have been something because her husband was supposedly some sort of fence for stolen goods and stuff. Yeah. So that might have been a personal thing. And then the first one, only one person out of all the people who were attacked ever said anything about the character actually having a white hood mask on.
Really?
Yeah, the woman who was attacked in the first attack said that she thought that it was a black man with a white hood over his face. But the guy who was attacked with her at the same time said, I never saw a hood, and I thought it was a tanned white man. It looked like a tanned white man to me. So there is some...
Forget my girlfriend. She's a dirty racist.
Yeah, right. Well, you know, the guy was hit over the head, so you never know, right? Like, he could be misremembering things. But the cops, even at the time, and of course this could speak to their sexism too, but they did think at the time that she was covering for somebody, just in kind of the way that she delivered that whole description. And... they thought that it was personal because both of these people, I think at the time, were in marriages that were splitting up. And they thought that it might have been this woman's husband, who was a very jealous type, that might have done this to them. But she was covering for him because, you know, like when you're in that abusive relationship, sometimes there's a weird dynamic where it's kind of like, I don't love this person, I want to get away from them, but at the same time, it's, you know, it gets really complicated. The dynamic's really weird. So that's what they thought of that at the time. But she's the only one to ever report a white mask of all the people who lived. The last woman who survived, she never even saw the person. So she didn't see like a white mask or anything like that. So
Well, let's go ahead and move on to remake or Rembrandt.
Okay.
Charlie, why don't you have at it, son?
You know, I mean, I think a real make. That's the new one. A real make would be great. A remake with real information. A real make. Yeah. I think that would be good. I think it would be good to have a remake complete with the theories about each one and bringing those people in as characters.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you're talking about like maybe a limited series, but...
Right.
Zodiac to me is a good modern model. I think Zodiac's a good modern model for a lot of different aspects of filmmaking. But, you know, one of the mottos that Fincher had in making Zodiac was that he would only show the killings or the attacks if somebody survived it. So if you look at that movie, any attack in that ends in the death of both people or a person or whatever, it's not shown. Because it was only if there was an eyewitness to survive it. And even the cops who had investigated that, like when they were out at Lake Berryessa, And they were saying, oh yeah, the attack was here and everything. And Fincher was like standing there looking around because it had changed a lot since the 60s. He said, no, I think it was actually over here. And he was right because he had researched it so thoroughly. So
yeah,
I really think something with that level of detail as a remake, I think would be great. I mean,
yeah, definitely.
I think the white mask thing is a great visual. You know, I mean, it was so good that what's his name, Sean Cunningham, stole it for Friday the 13th, right? So
right, yeah,
it's a great visual. But I mean, I would like to see something that maybe honors the victims and their families a bit more.
Sure, yeah.
And the characters involved.
I agree with that 100%. And there's only one man who could play Morales, in my opinion. I don't know about you, but
Don Cheadle. Right? I mean,
I was thinking more Kurt Russell, but yeah, Don Cheadle would work
Kurt
too.
Russell.
Yeah.
No, Kurt Russell's great. Kurt Russell, yeah. Of course.
Don Cheadle.
For the record, I think Don Cheadle could do it, but
oh yeah, absolutely, he's great. He's fantastic. But yeah, I was thinking Kurt Russell, but okay, Don Cheadle. Yeah.
No, I think he could be good. I think he could be good. I think he could be tough and charming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and I could see, it'd be nice to see him kind of play a press hound. I'm trying to think if he's played a press hound in his career.
Sure.
It'd be nice to see him play that and to see like a remake kind of take Gonzalez, the real Ranger, to task for being a press hound, you know, for being kind of like a face rather than an actual force. So, because, you know, like the thing about this guy too is that they said at the time that he was investigating this, they said he killed something like 76 people or something. In reality, it was more like 24 or 20. You know, it was always inflated. I'm like, the guy still killed 20-some people. How many of those people did he have to kill? I don't know, but it would be nice to explore that a little bit too. That's why I think it would have to be like a series, you know?
I just think it's interesting that they like to flaunt an officer's numbers like that. He killed 76 people.
Yeah.
It's well, great.
I know, but you know, the thing about it too, man, is that we're looking at it from a 2020 perspective, looking at a 1976 movie about a 1945-46 killing. If you think about like the 1940s, this guy at the age that he was, you're really still just coming out of the Wild West era. Because a lot of people don't think the Wild West era really ended until probably like the teens, you know, or maybe even later. So this guy, I'm not sure exactly how old Gonzalez was at that time, but he could have been a holdover from that era. And especially in Texas, Arkansas, down in that area, there probably still was a lot of cachet in that. But nowadays, looking at it, it's kind of like, why are you talking about that? Like, you're making him sound like a serial killer, basically.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So.
That's a good point. Well, there you have it, folks. The Town That Dreaded Sundown.
No, wait a minute. What do you think about a remake of this?
Oh, I told you. I agree with your assessment 100%.
That's it, really? You don't want to, there's nothing else you want to see? You don't want to see, like, Texarkana as it really was? Like, kind of a den of iniquity in parts? And, you know, anything else that you want to see? Like,
they could put a couple of whorehouses in there.
You know, I want like realism. I want this and I want that. He's like, you know what? I just need a couple more whorehouses. Really, I just need a couple of brothels. I need a couple of troublesome houses in this movie.
That's right.
You know, okay, that's great. That sounds great.
I agree with the realism of the murders. If we're looking at it from a realistic perspective, then yeah, I mean the town I think should fall under that category as well. I mean, it should be very realistic in its depiction too. So,
well, let me put you on the spot here a little bit then.
Okay.
Who do you think should play Ramsey? You had the idea for Russell. What do you think about Ramsey?
Patrick Wilson.
Okay. A little bit of an older choice. Like he's not old, but he skews a little bit older.
He's like late 40s, and I like Patrick Wilson in pretty much anything that he's in. I think he's one of the best working actors going right now. He's done a role similar to that in the past in a couple of different movies, and he does it well. So I think he'd be a good choice. Or even maybe, coming back, we talked about him earlier, Garrett Dillahunt. He's always a good choice for something like that too.
Hey, Garrett Dillahunt.
Fantastic.
He's so great, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's another guy that you can just kind of plug him into just about any movie, and he can do whatever you need him to do.
Yeah. Wilson and Kurt Russell were in Bone Tomahawk together, and they were a good pairing in that movie. So I think they would just be equally great in this one.
Yeah.
And I think Dillahunt and Russell would be awesome as well. So I see it being a win in either direction there. So
yeah, I mean, my first thought was Chris Pine, just because people are always maligning him, and I think he's really a lot better than people give him credit for.
Yeah, I do too.
But that changes the dynamic, right? Like that, because he's younger than Patrick Wilson, that would change the dynamic. I kind of think what you're talking about is better, because if you have Patrick Wilson and Kurt Russell kind of working off of each other, if we're doing like a real hardcore real make, right? Like a remake with real facts.
Yeah.
Then, time period specific and everything, then I think Wilson and Russell would be great.
Yeah.
Although thinking about it, it's kind of like, what if you kept the facts of the case, but untethered it from the time period? Seeing Ramsey go from being a man to a woman would be really something. Like, that could open up a whole lot of stuff too, but
that could be cool, yeah.
That's another 3-hour conversation. So.
Right. And if we're doing that, maybe Olivia Wilde.
Yeah, she's great. Well, I really would want to know more of the racial makeup of Texarkana back then too, because even if you could bring in somebody like Viola Davis.
Yeah.
Hang on, let me say her name one more time. Viola Davis. I just love saying her name because I think of all the stuff she's been in that I love.
Yeah,
and
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, she's just spectacular. Her with Kurt Russell going against each other would just be, I just want to see that. Just any movie. Just give me any movie with that pairing. I actually am getting chills, and it's hot here in the projection booth, and I'm getting chills thinking about those two working together. Woo! Mercy!
Well, there you have it. I got some work to do. I got some flooring to put down in the snack bar. Yeah.
Got to cover up all those nacho cheese stains. No
kidding. Yeah. Flooring that no one's going to step on for a while, considering that we're working out of a window right now with COVID. But
that's true.
Eventually, folks, you can step foot on my new flooring, and you better not fuck it up.
Wow. We can't wait to have you back in person real soon. Come get you a lip and butt hot dog and a Schlené beer. Good Lord.
Man, you think I'm bad, Slewfoot, man. She's not into it. She don't take no mess.
Well,
you come in there and you're tracking shit all over the floor. Slewfoot's on your case.
I've told Jikey I'm putting my foot down. If this new flooring thing has taught us anything, it's that we can't buy that cheap nacho cheese from now on.
No.
That stuff stains, and it stains. My toenails still don't look right.
Gross.
I like what I like, man.
Thank you for joining us at the All Night Drive-In Picture Show. We hope you enjoyed our feature this evening. You can follow us on social media at the All Night Drive-In Picture Show page on Facebook or at All Night Drive-In on Twitter and Instagram. If you have questions, comments, or movie requests, you can send them to our email address at allnightdriveинpictureshow@gmail.com. Join us next week for another fantastic feature, and until then, we appreciate your patronage. Don't forget to hang up your speaker, and please drive carefully on your way out.
The All Night Drive-In Picture Show is edited and produced by Markham Harvey. Our theme song is composed and performed by Lee Rosevere and edited by The Night Watch. Our head ticket taker is Stubbs Jorgensen. Our snack bar manager is Lucy Slewfoot. Our sign master is Jason Baldwin. Our drive-in manager is the one and only George Jikey. I'm your announcer, Lane Hewitt. This has been a Clown Business Coalition production. Good night, everyone.